So in Sanskrit, the word for ether is akash or akasha, which means, which also is the word for space. So air is not space, right? Air is actually, it has the chemical structure, the air on this planet, as we know, if we left this planet and tried to go somewhere else, we would need something to help us breathe there because though it would have space, the space is everywhere, the ether is everywhere. Air, at least in the way that we need it, is distinct and has co-evolved over a long period of time with all the creatures here. So while even air, that subtlest and most invisible of elements, still has a composition, ether is the nothingness that everything has a chance to fill. And ether, whereas, often we work with breath as air, there's lots of other ways to work with it as well. But working with ether, the closest thing that we can work with here is our awareness, that which is not perceivable but does the perceiving. Because space can't have any qualities besides its qualitylessness, right? Of course, it also reminds us of and is completely, absolutely connected to the concepts of nothingness or emptiness from Buddhism. And so all of this stuff is stuff that we've really, dived into before. And the invitation for this week is to try to experience some of this for real. And to give yourself the opportunity to actually acknowledge, to actually honor, and to actually spend time with and investigate this aspect of you that is always present. Maybe this week is a great opportunity to reframe how you think about that or talk about that or imagine that, to challenge yourself to see and perceive in a different way, to challenge yourself to to give yourself a chance to perceive the nothingness that is already here. The inquiry questions that I offered this week, how does ether relate to union? So I've connected these things here. Each element has been connected with something we're trying to do, and I've connected ether here. There's lots of different alternatives, but I've connected it with union, to unite, and that's because qualitylessness, belonging to space, is the one thing that all the elements share, that every being and non-being and entity in the universe shares. Belonging to space. And that means that it's equally distributed everywhere. Sorry, my dog's on one this morning. So while I might be able to have a lot of earth, right, associated with the physical, in a lot of traditions, earth is also associated with finances, money, right? Everything that's material. And there's a huge amount of inequality, obviously. We're not united all across the world in terms of how much land we own, how much of the earth or how much of the material that we possess. But there's no owning space. There's nothing there that can be owned. There's nothing there that can be bought or sold, as much as I'm sure they try. And so this is this aspect that is actually equal, that is actually belongs equally to everyone and everything. It's um, the aspect of the self that is, because it's unownable, it's immeasurable. It's also, it's undividable. You might have a totally different experience of it over there. Um, but the ether doesn't change. And the ether is the same for you as for me, as the richest person in the world. Um, so that's a little bit of my reflection on how ether and union are related, but explore for yourself. Um, okay, how does ether relate to enlightenment? And so following this thread of, if awareness is the way that we can really know ether or start to experience ether in our direct awareness, why might we need to meditate in order to experience our ether? What does ether have to do with this whole journey? I'm saying enlightenment, right? This is this Aligned to Enlighten series. But what, what does this whole journey have to do with ether? What is its role along the way? How can you work with it? Um, Enlightenment has been the word that's sort of the stand-in for our bigger goals here. It's also a word that denotes the goal of all the spiritual practices. And so it's always present with us as we're doing these things. Um, just as the ether is always here. Here's the funny thing about things that are so ever present, is that we lose the capacity to be aware of them. How can awareness be aware of itself? Awareness is aware of the earth and the air and the fire and the water and the stuff. How might it be able to be aware of itself? And then the question, how does ether relate to transformation? And that one I'm going to invite you to explore on your own. Always love to hear responses, love to hear what's gone on with you and what this journey has been like for you. If you're on the line, you're welcome to share something in the chat box now. I'm going to close up this talk over the next few minutes with just a little bit about my journey and just sort of my reflections, my reflections, uh, and then some quotes for us. So I think that the thing that is striking me most, and you know what, I'll share with this again, the principles of alignment that I started with, which I think are pretty, um, you know, pretty succinct and pretty, you know what principles want to be, pretty succinct and kind of hitting all of the marks here of why we're working with alignment. And you know, the very first one of these principles that I wrote down and shared with you guys at the beginning of this is alignment is something that we can work with in the now and the here, always. It's embodied, it's in this direct experience. Or I guess the first thing I put was it's in the here. The second thing I put was it's in the now. But you get what I mean. And just the simplicity and the just the pure presence of it, and it's not a big philosophy that we're focused on. Though philosophy, of course, will get talked about. What we're really focusing on is something that is just, it's actionable in the here and now. It brings us into the present moment. It doesn't bring us back into, as theory unfortunately often does, or philosophy often does, back into the mind. It brings us into the body when we use that word alignment, when we try to practice alignment. So I'd say that the thing that I have been the most struck by and sort of shifted by as I've been working on this with you guys is how do I put this? Is I think what's really shifted for me is immediacy. So the way that my mind works a lot of the time, and the way that my whole psyche works, is that when I'm really kind of stuck in a certain state of being or an emotional state or whatever, I can go to my abstract mind and I can kind of tell myself this is gonna feel better later. And that's great. That's really useful. And most of the time that's true, but what I'm finding is increasingly I can find some version that feels better right now. I can find some best alignment no matter how funky I'm feeling. I can just make like a teensy shift to feel a little bit more empowered, right? And that's been an enormous game changer for me. And, it's been really interesting to see how a part of me will really kind of almost want to stay stuck. And what I've been working with is kind of just telling myself, Aaron, be the version of you, whatever that version is that you think you're gonna be tomorrow, the enlightened version, that whatever it is, that whoever that person you think is going to cross the finish line, whoever that person is, who you think is going to be the person who finally like has gotten over some of her stuff and is finally content or enlightened or whatever. Can you be her now? What's the version of her that's accessible now? And this has been enabling me to find a lot more freedom and to realize how much I've been going through a lot of my life not giving myself permission to do that. And that's its own inquiry that I'm also engaging in. I don't have anything in particular to report back from there. I'm still digging in, right? But what's that about? What is it that I think I'm supposed to earn in between now and that finish line? What is it? The fact that we're made of ether is the indication that the most spiritual of spiritual and most deep, deep conceptual, whatever, emptiness, it's actually the most ordinary thing of all. It's actually the thing that we all share. So, lots and lots of great quotes for exploring this. Any of the quotes that I've already shared in this course, great, great, great. I'm going to share a little bit from the Tao Te Ching and that I haven't shared. Okay. So, or I haven't shared in this course. Okay. So here is a little bit about the power of nothing, the ether. We join spokes together in a wheel, but it is the center hole that makes the wagon move. We shape clay into a pot, but it is the emptiness inside that holds whatever we want. We hammer wood for a house, but it is the inner space that makes it livable. We work with being, but non-being is what we use. And so I think that that's also an invitation to frame it as, don't just sort of do, the aligning myself is kind of a doing, do whatever it takes to be the most, clear, empowered version of myself. Great. But then there's also a being, kind of feeling into it, a sense of it. We do all this stuff, but it is that non-being, that nothingness, that we use. And then finally, I'm going to share a quote that I shared right at the beginning of all of this from the Sargadatta that perhaps, as it did for me when I reread it, will speak to you more. Yeah, it'll say something different to you this time, maybe. We'll see. Okay. And this is what will close the talk. There is a power in the universe working for enlightenment and liberation. It is the unifying factor. Unity liberates. Freedom unites. Ultimately, nothing is mine or yours. Everything is ours. Just be one with yourself, and you will be one with all, at home in the entire universe. It is the simple that is certain, not the complicated. Somehow people do not trust the simple, the easy, the always available. Why not give an honest trial to what I say? It may look very small and insignificant, but it is like a seed that grows into a mighty tree. Give yourselves a chance.